Good morning. This is your National Predictive Services National Fire Weather Podcast, valid for Tuesday, March 24th, 2020. We will be recording these briefings weekly until activity increases, and then they will be recorded more frequently. Let's take a look at the latest Sit 209 report that was issued last Friday on March 20th. You can see activity across the country was light, with the activity being mainly focused over southern area. Other areas did have a little bit of activity, like eastern area. However, things were quiet and quieter than the previous week. Before jumping into the weather discussion, let's take a quick look at the fuels across the country just to show you where we're standing in the lower 48. Here's a look at the ERCs for today. You can see they're pretty low, so no concerns there, except there are some dry spots in Florida. As you can see, they've been experiencing some very dry conditions over the past month or so, and that's going to continue for a while longer. However, if we take a look at the burning index, you can see values starting to elevate a little bit across the northern Great Plains along the eastern portions of the Rocky Mountain front area, actually more so out over the plains, and western portions of Nevada. That's in response mainly to some increasing westerly flow that we see, and I'll show you shortly in the weather models how that's going to impact things. But this is for today. Let's take a look at what it shows for tomorrow, which is a little bit more concerning. So here's the burning index forecast for tomorrow. You can see that's quite a bit of an area of concern there. That's mainly due to increasing winds of a multi-day event that's going to be ongoing across Colorado, New Mexico, and into West Texas. So we're looking for some pretty strong west-southwesterly winds developing after today as a system swings in from the west, which we will be talking about shortly. Again, this slightly elevated values here across Florida. They are mostly in reference to the ERC input into the BIs. Okay, let's take a look at the model data to show you what's coming down the pike over the next week, how to read this image. There are several different features overlaid. First, let's start with the wind barbs. You can see those little arrow-shaped things. Basically, this is a wind barb that shows winds that are blowing from the west towards the east, so we call those westerly winds. The triangle indicates 50 knots of wind, which is about 58 miles an hour. And this wind here shows 45 knots of wind, 30 knots of wind coming out of the northwest. And so that's how you read those. These winds are at the 10,000 foot level. So during the afternoon periods, some of those can be brought down to the surface, creating for some gusty conditions. These lines are the height lines showing the weather patterns in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, and the background imagery is precipitation. This image is for mid-morning today, which is Tuesday. And so we have this upper-level low-pressure trough along the Pacific Northwest coast with some pretty good precipitation with it. This is a pretty cold trough. We're probably going to see temperatures across the northwestern states cool by about 10 to 15 degrees. Snow levels are going to come down pretty low. So in the Cascades, you're going to pick up some needed snowfall there to make up for some of those deficits. To a degree, although you still won't get up to normal. The Siskiyou is going to do pretty well as well, and so let's push this forward through the day to show you how things progress. And so looking at this image, this is for around lunchtime today, which is Tuesday. Mid-afternoon, you can see with the heating, get some destabilization. This air becomes unstable, and you see the shower activity increasing. There could be a few rumbles of thunder in here, but the main story from this, from a fire weather standpoint, is that it's going to bring some pretty good moisture to Northern California, as you can see, to the High Sierra, to the Cascades. You'll probably pick up some moderate snowfall amounts. Again, snow levels with this are going to be low. I wouldn't be surprised to see snow in the lower elevations as well. Again, from a fire weather standpoint, what we're concerned about is this westerly flow that's developing over the southwest. It's going to be a good bit breezy this afternoon, so it'll be borderline critical conditions there with RHs down into the upper teens to lower 20s. Looking across the southeast, Florida remains dry, just a few afternoon storms there along the coast near Apalachicola. But for all intents and purposes, the rain stays to the north over the Tennessee River Valley and central North Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. So as we go through the overnight period, going into Wednesday, this is tonight around midnight, you can see the shower activity kind of decreases a little bit, but that flow pattern over the southwest that just continues to strengthen. Again, that's a bit concerning. And as we go into the daytime tomorrow, which is Wednesday on the 25th, you can see by mid-morning, which is what this image shows, that flow pattern is pretty strong over the southwest, and we start mixing down a little bit of winds by afternoon, which is what this image shows. Florida again remains pretty dry, but we're looking for a critical fire weather day along the Mexican border into West Texas, eastern portions of New Mexico, southeastern Colorado, but the main focus point for the critical conditions is going to be across here where the RHs will be in the mid-teens. Looking into California, you can see the mountain snow continuing up there, so that's going to help with the snowpack, which is way behind average up in the Sierra. Siskiyous continue to pick up a little bit, as do the southern Cascades and the central mountains of central Idaho. Don't be surprised, here's some thunder mixed in with this during the afternoon period, because this is an unstable system, because the upper level temperatures are so cold. That's what's creating the instability there. So here's a look at late afternoon tomorrow. And then going into tomorrow night, what I'll draw your attention to is that the energy associated with the base of this trough continues to intensify and does close off into another low. And what that does is that strengthens that southwesterly flow across southern California and Arizona, and getting into the eastern portions of the Four Corners region as well. So as we go into Thursday, this multi-day event is going to continue down there, and the winds by afternoon, which is where we're starting to get into here with this frame, they do pick up a good bit. There's a 50-knot barb right there. It's 45 knots right there out of the southwest. So some of those winds are going to mix down to the surface on Thursday afternoon. And with your RHs in the teens, you're going to have some more critical fire weather conditions again on Thursday afternoon. And look at that. Those winds do continue over there into the Oklahoma Panhandle and into portions of western Kansas as well. So a pretty big area of critical fire weather conditions. One limiting factor to keep in mind is that the fuels are probably in somewhat decent shape. They've had moisture recently, so that could be a little bit of a mitigating factor, something that could offset these windy conditions with low humidity. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So here's a look at late Thursday afternoon, and then getting into Thursday night. That trough is swinging inland towards Baja California and Arizona. And this is a look at Friday morning. The trough is now swinging inland. It's located over the Four Corners region by mid-morning on Friday. Not much moisture left in this system, but we're still looking at some critical fire weather conditions continuing into Friday across eastern portions of the southwest. Meanwhile, there's another system approaching the Pacific Northwest coast. Temperatures across the west behind this trough are going to start recovering a little bit from being well below normal to being normal to maybe even slightly above normal as we go into the weekend. We got a little bit of weak ridging coming in behind the system, as you would expect. Also look down in Florida. Things are continuing to be dry down there again. So again, we're not looking for any relief anytime soon for those folks down that way. As we move towards the weekend, here's a look at Friday afternoon and Friday evening. There's that weak ridge of high pressure coming inland. There's that next system we were talking about. First system moves out into the plains, and we start seeing some strong storms out this way. We might see a continuance of critical fire weather conditions into the evening hours on Friday before they start to subside with increasing RHs due to the temperatures dropping off as they normally do diurnally. So going into Saturday, here's how things are shaking out. We kind of start seeing a little bit of a pattern change occurring. This next system coming in is a good bit weaker, as you can see, but it's still got some pretty good moisture for the Cascades, so that's good. Snow levels will be slightly higher off the valley floors at least as this thing comes inland. More precipitation for Northern California, which is very much needed. Maybe a few showers or storms kicking into the southern Sierra, so that's good news there. But notice that the winds have relaxed by Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening time frame across the southwest, so they finally break out of that pattern at that point in time. Moving on into Sunday, you can see that this front that's moving across the southeast doesn't have much moisture left in it. It's all wrapped up into the low up here, so Florida, you don't catch a break from this, unfortunately. See a little breezy southwesterly flow over Texas, but nothing too bad. And southwest looks pretty quiet. It looks like some showers up here in parts of the Great Basin going into Colorado. Northern Rockies picks up some valley rain, mountain snow, and more of the same for the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. Then heading into Monday, here's how things are playing out. Weak ridging, moving into California and the southwest. And what we're going to see is a gradual transition to a weak ridge in the latter part of the extended periods. And that's going to promote overall warmer and drier conditions for California and the southwest. But the Pacific Northwest is probably going to continue to see systems like this moving across and then moving into the Northern Rockies where the systems weaken. So going to Monday afternoon, here's how that plays out. And then just stepping forward just to give you an idea, to look at Tuesday, ridge moves into the plains, very weak trough coming in behind this ridge. And then a weak system into Northern California for Wednesday. But again, the long range stuff doesn't point to these systems dropping much further south than this. So that concludes the weather discussion. So let's move on to a quick summary to give you a recap. All right, so let's summarize things for today. The main concern will be for the breezy southwesterly to westerly flow strengthening over New Mexico and Colorado as that low slowly begins to drift south to be over Oregon by this afternoon. Moderate snow is expected in the Cascades and Siskiyou, so that'll help the snowpack out a little bit. Look for maybe some isolated thunder mixed in with those showers as well, especially across Oregon and California. Again, we're looking for strong storms across the Mississippi, Tennessee, and Ohio River valleys. Looking ahead to tomorrow, look for windy and dry conditions across eastern New Mexico and west Texas as the flow pattern strengthens in response to that low that's going to be strengthening to the south over California. So one of the limiting factors for fire development tomorrow probably will be the actual fuel conditions, which are still somewhat moist. So that could offset that to a degree. Again, look for scattered showers and mountain snow across Oregon, Idaho, and California, and some of the other surrounding states. And looking at Wednesday and beyond, the critical fire weather conditions are going to continue across New Mexico, Colorado, West Texas, Oklahoma, maybe even western Kansas as well. Again, the state of the fuels may help offset that to a degree, but it's going to be quite windy and dry with afternoon humidities, with this event being down into the teens. Showery patterns going to continue across northern California, the Pac Northwest, and the northern Rockies. Temperatures will gradually start warming by Friday and into the weekend across the west as some weak ridging comes in. Florida and South Texas, you're going to remain dry. I don't see any relief coming anytime soon. This briefing is intended for the partnering land management agencies within the fire community and should be used as a tool when assessing the allocation of resources. Thank you for listening. We'll talk with you again later.